So it looks like we are visible and ready to go. Hi, everyone. Sorry we're running a little bit late. We had some technical difficulties on my end of things, but we are here today for a live interview with Jeffrey Brewer. Wait, my name is Emily, and I'm the community manager here on 2 Diabetes, working with Diabetes Hands Foundation. Here for an interview with Jeffrey Brewer, founder and CEO of Bigfoot Biomedical. So if you're tuned in, that's what you're here to see. And this is really exciting because Bigfoot is big news. Jeffrey, I just put the camera on you. Thank you so much for taking some time to be here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Emily.
Would you start out just by telling us who you are, what's your connection to diabetes, and then we can get into talking about you founding Bigfoot.
Sure. Well, my connection to type 1 diabetes is my son, Sean, who was diagnosed about going on 14 years ago now. I was a tech entrepreneur and had just come off some really exciting and draining times building a couple companies and was moving into a new phase of my life where I was going to work in philanthropy. And as I have come to say, this cause picked me rather than me picking it when my son was diagnosed. And obviously on that day, his life changed and our family's life changed. I quickly began to circle and determine places where I could put my energies and my time in order to thinking about a cure for his type 1 diabetes, but also thinking about ways that we can make it easier to live with the disease. Because it dawned on us pretty quickly that we were given this really dangerous drug, and we were given some tools which really seemed old school at the time, and there just had to be a better way. There had to be a better approach to delivering insulin, and I've been on I guess a journey for the last 13 years that's led me to where I am here. First led me to the JDRF, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, where I was a supporter, donor, advocate, and where I got involved and with some other folks founded the Artificial Pancreas Project back in 2005, because I saw that organization as a vehicle that was going to achieve some really important objectives to foster some research in the area of artificial pancreas, the idea that you could tie together an insulin pump and a continuous glucose monitor, but also to help work with the companies and with the government to figure out what some of the challenges were in getting this stuff to market, because it seemed like the technologies existed. And back in 2002, when my son was diagnosed, and I was given some needles and a few vials of insulin, and literally a hand-drawn piece of paper, a sliding scale of if your blood glucose is this, if his blood glucose is this, give that much insulin. If it's that, give this much insulin. And I just was appalled. I thought, we can land 747s on autopilot, control oil refineries with automated systems. We can't do better than this. And my belief has never wavered that there was an opportunity and that the tools existed. It did turn out to be a more challenging problem than I gave it credit for at first. So it took me a 13-year apprenticeship coming through the system, first as a volunteer and then as the CEO of JDRF for the last 4 years. But pretty well determined that the existing insulin pump companies aren't going to lick this problem. And so we've come together, not just me, but a group of people, 34 people strong now, 4 founders of which all have a direct tie to type 1 diabetes. Half the people in the company have a tie to type 1 diabetes. This is a cause that's very personal, but we also believe we have a solution that's going to help a lot of people besides ourselves, and we have a responsibility to make that happen.
Absolutely. Before we get into Bigfoot specifically, I remember years ago, I was telling a friend, I was explaining to my friend what are sort of the gadgets that I wear. So I had an insulin pump with a controller and a continuous glucose monitor with a controller. And I explained, this tells me my blood sugar, and then I tell this how much insulin I need. And my friend looked at me and said, "Can't you go to Radio Shack and get a transmitter so that they just talk to each other and you can be out of the loop?" And I said, if only. Can you talk about some of the technological complexities, sort of in broad strokes for a layperson, of course, that you kind of discovered as you were thinking about artificial pancreas technology?
Well, I guess the first thing to understand when we're designing our system is that the gadgets are not the important part. You know, the hardware has been here for a long period of time. Like you said, we've had insulin pumps for decades. We've had CGM, continuous glucose monitors, for over a decade. Those have gotten better, more reliable, more accurate, and they'll get better still, smaller, easier to use. But it's really the tying of these things together, as you said, the transmitter. All of the things we're working on are going to talk via Bluetooth Low Energy. But we have this great tool that brings electronic devices together in the modern world, and it's called a smartphone. So we actually think that everything should talk to the smartphone. And I do most of my business on this phone. It seems pretty silly that when it comes to the most important aspect of a person's health, for instance, that has type 1 diabetes, the delivery of this dangerous drug called insulin, I'm pretty much totally alone up until very recently, and still not using much of the capabilities of the modern connected world. So that's an important part, is making it all talk to the phone. And then the phone talks to the cloud, so you can capture all this wonderful data. It's not just about the on-body automation, the artificial pancreas that people think about in terms of clinical trials, but it's about how it connects to the rest of the world and to your life and actually fits into your life. We want to have our systems fit into the way you live, not have you have to live your life according to how devices work. And that's a very big difference. And it really requires you to think from the ground up about the problem you're trying to solve, and cater everything, the devices, the software, to how people live. Because the whole goal here is to have people spending less time and less effort on diabetes and doing better. And so it's about connecting everything, making it intuitive, and that's as much the opportunity and the challenge as anything.
Oh my goodness, it's really exciting to hear you talk about this. It's really exciting, and I think it's exciting to hear you talk about this because obviously you're really excited about it and really passionate about it. So let's move on to talking about Bigfoot Biomedical and sort of the founding of that company and the principles it's founded on and what you guys are doing.
Well, we're a company that is dedicated to the quality of life, the health, and the safety of people with type 1 diabetes and their families. And for anybody who lives with the disease, it's a family dynamic. It is a disease that really eats away at quality of life in the amount of time and attention you have to pay to it as a person, all the different decisions you have to make throughout the day, the planning you have to do, the anticipation, the worry, and of course, for the people who love that person, they share in that. And it really, it's a disease that just takes too much out of you, takes too much time away that could be better spent on things that are fun and rewarding. And we want to give some of that time back to people. And we want to fit the system into their lives to do that. And when I say a system, I mean a system that includes not just the devices and the things that are required to use the devices, but the software that they connect to, the tools that are made available to help you use the system better and to support the system, all that stuff together. So we think about it as a service. Actually, we're going to deliver a service on a monthly basis, which is we're going to help you better deliver this drug called insulin in a safer, more effective way that requires less of your time and energy and worry. And we're going to charge a monthly fee for that. And with that monthly fee comes all the gadgets, comes the insulin pump and the infusion set and the CGM and the sensor. And for as long as we need blood glucose monitors to calibrate the sensor, that and the test strips, all that stuff gets packaged together for one cost, one prescription, one payment by an insurance company, one copay by the person with the disease. And we send you all that stuff without you having to worry about it. So I know you have a closet at home, Emily, where you have all your stuff, right? You got infusion sets and reservoirs and lancets and test strips. And frankly, you're having to do inventory management for the companies. And that's an additional burden we want to take off people's backs. and actually just send them what they need with a little bit of a buffer when they need it. So they don't have to constantly think about reordering. Do I have that? Did I get the prescription for that? This is actually part of the stress that living with the disease entails. And we want to chip away at all of it, you know? So we're thinking about the big picture of everything you have to do in order to live with the disease. Technology and smart design and automation, all packaged together, but just also thinking about the practical things and making it easier.
Absolutely. Holy cow, I'd love to put something else in my diabetes closet.
Yes.
So how did you even come up with this idea? Because this is such a completely different concept, a completely different model than any other model I've heard of around artificial pancreas, which we think of not as a service, but as a piece of technology, as a gadget, a D-gadget, if you will. This is a completely different idea. What was the process that got you to this?
Well, it's a non-traditional process. I mean, if you were a company, an entrepreneur, and you had some technology like this artificial pancreas technology, and you had an algorithm, you'd go do focus groups, you'd talk to customers, and you'd ask them, you know, what is it you really want? You know, what is it that undermines, you know, your quality of life and having this disease? And then you'd go and you'd interview hundreds of people, and you'd go back and do statistical analysis and come up with a list of things, and then you design a product around that. Well, we can skip all that because we actually are the customer. and although I don't have the disease, I have been in contact with and have deep relationships with a lot of people who do, including my son. And I understand what they live with, and you know, to the extent I can, I live with it myself. It is something that we understand at this company on a deep and personal basis what the problems are. And so we just put them all on a list, and we're solving them. And we really benefit from not only having people in this company that, like myself, are parents, you know, which is once removed. So I need to be careful not to actually impose what I think people with type 1 diabetes want. I think I have some insights, but it's more important what the people who actually have the disease want. And, you know, we've got half a dozen of those folks inside the company as well. Different touch points with the disease are really important in terms of understanding the challenge. This is a solution designed around the people who have to live with the disease on a daily basis. That is a really big advantage we have, and that we know the customer better than any of the companies who are developing solutions today. And we intend to make the best of that. It just makes things shorter and allows us to be smarter and quicker in terms of our design efforts.
That's fantastic. So can you go a little more into detail about the service? You've said that you will provide, it's a service that people will sign up for a monthly fee, and you will provide the insulin pump and the infusion sets and the continuous glucose monitor. Do you provide, is there coaching or counseling, or what's the technology? How does it integrate so that it actually manages our blood sugar?
Sure. So, well, what it fundamentally starts with is a loop, a closed loop between a continuous glucose monitor, which is going to be the best one on the market, a Dexcom sensor, which most accurate, most reliable, and also the easiest to wear. You know, they just thought about making it easier, insertion and wear. And it's clearly the best on the market, and we're committed to working with the best providers of any of the technology components, because we don't see ourselves as a hardware company, a medical device company. We're actually integrating and designing an ecosystem that includes a bunch of these things, and we're going to work with the best partners, and Dexcom is clearly far and away the best on the sensor space. We also had an opportunity to work with an innovative little company called Asante Solutions, which unfortunately wasn't able to survive, but which has provided a wonderful foundation for our insulin delivery platform. They were really attentive to, I think, much more so than a number of other companies, what people who live with the disease go through on a daily basis. That's why they were the only ones to actually get rid of that ridiculous insulin loading process and the cartridge that every other pump has, and you have to have the needle and no bubbles and get the pen and tap and make sure you can get the bubbles out, and it doesn't work anyway. Asante basically, said, let's use a pre-filled pen cartridge, 300 units, slap it in, put the cap on, auto prime, you're done. That was designed by somebody who actually cared about the customer in a way that the other companies don't seem to, and or maybe cared or understood the customer at least in a way the other companies didn't. A great platform. It was incomplete in that it was just an insulin delivery device. It didn't have the CGM, it didn't have the software, it didn't have the automation, didn't have the remote monitoring that we're going to have. But it's a great insulin delivery device, and therefore we, as a result of moving quickly, we're able to take advantage of an opportunity where we acquired all the assets of Asante. And today I'm actually speaking to you from the former Asante headquarters in Milpitas, which they had made a big investment in, and which we're able to leverage today, and it's become the home for Bigfoot Biomedical. It's been the reason that I and Bryan Mazlish, co-founder of Bigfoot, moved out here and now live in Palo Alto. That is the CGM and the pump, the core of the system, the on-body system. What we really are leveraging is the wonderful work that Bryan did to develop an algorithm to connect the two. And as many people know now, although it was only relatively recently announced, Bryan and his family for the last going on 3 years have been living with a closed loop artificial pancreas. He packed into an insulin pump. He used a Dexcom sensor and basically closed the loop between the two with a cell phone, and his son, Sam, 9 years old, and his wife, Sarah, who has had diabetes since before he met her in college, have had much easier lives and better results in terms of glycemic management because they've been able to rely upon this system. So this is ready for prime time. It's not a matter of can it be done? Is it possible? At JDRF, we proved outpatient proof of concept trials, tens of millions of dollars. We just couldn't get the companies interested. And then this actually went to the point where it's a DIY project for a very smart guy like Bryan. That's the core of the system that we're bringing forward to market is a device that basically between meal times, you don't need to think about it because it's constantly protecting you. It's constantly varying insulin delivery based on projections of your glucose values. That's going to be a big advance for people with type 1 diabetes. But it's not the only thing we're doing. We also have moved everything to the phone. So you're not going to have to out yourself as a person with a chronic disease every time you want to take care of yourself, to give yourself mealtime insulin, for instance, or to check and see if your pump is still working. You don't have to actually pull this stuff out, which is an inconvenience. Even if you're not embarrassed by it, it's just like you don't want the hassle of having to explain to people, what is that? Looks like an 80s pager. No, it's type 1 diabetes. I have insulin, blah, blah, blah. When you have it all on the phone, that becomes the interface to the system, then who knows what you're doing? And nobody's business anyway, right? You take care of yourself. You announce mealtime insulin, and basically the rest of the time the system's on autopilot, unless there's some error condition that a sensor has failed or the infusion set has failed. Things like that, the system's going to tell you. So it's going to be helping you in so many different ways, not just automating insulin delivery over time, but also pointing out, when there's a problem, getting you involved to fix that problem, and way ahead of the time that it would actually become a problem that would require you to seek medical attention. And that, at the end of the day, is what makes it a business, because we all want this for ourselves and our kids, our loved ones. But if it's not a business, it doesn't work and can't be delivered scalably across the entire community. And this is going to save a lot of money in terms of healthcare costs, because it's going to keep people out of the hospital. And that's
right.
A very big cost to the system today that is becoming increasingly recognized that we need to tackle. And no one else has the system to do it.
Wow. So first off, I am green with envy of Bryan Mazlish's family, who's already using this system, and I'm sure very much enjoying the use of the system. We have some good...
I'm actually green with envy as well. We actually made a a commitment early on to do this the right way for everyone, not to just share it here. So it unfortunately stops with Bryan's family right now, this innovation. And then we're all working really hard to make this possible for as many people in the world as can have it as quickly as possible, including ourselves.
Right, absolutely. Well, as you said, your staff are composed of people who either have diabetes themselves or have a really close connection to diabetes. I know a lot of them have either a child or a spouse who have diabetes, and so it's all folks who would really benefit from this service, and I'm sure who really want to access it themselves. So, so we have some questions in the chat room about timeline and cost. Let's get into those things.
So timeline. Unfortunately, we have to go through a development effort and some clinical trials. This is a product that is regulated at the highest degree of FDA scrutiny, as it should be, quite frankly, because it's a life-critical system that, it's got to work. It's got to work, and it's got to work all the time. And that is a high bar, but it's one that we're going to clear because it's appropriate. So that's going to require us to do some testing. It's going to require us to do a couple trials, first in a hospital, then in an outpatient setting, and then it's going to require us to do what's called a pivotal trial, which for medical devices is the trial that you use to register an application with the FDA. Bottom line is we're looking at towards the end of 2018 in order to get this on the market. It's going to take us 2.5 years to get this locked down and approved by the FDA. And that is way farther off than any of us wants, but it's light speed in medical device world. And the FDA is actually collaborating with us to make this as quick as possible. I am someone who, in the past, in my role early in JDRF, had some criticisms of the FDA for not moving fast enough and supporting innovation that could be really important to patients. But the world's changed, and I have to give the FDA a tremendous amount of credit. The FDA has made all this possible. I mean, literally, the changes that the FDA has made, the investment in understanding the challenges, and the collaboration that they are bringing to their interactions with companies now have literally made the opportunity possible that we are pursuing, and I thank them for it. And they are going to be a big part of the success of us getting this stuff to market. I really think there's been so much progress there, and JDRF did a wonderful job in terms of working with them. But at the end of the day, they've got the right approach. And any of the companies who say the FDA is the reason this stuff doesn't exist yet, it's not right. It's the companies. Now it's on us. It's on us, and we'll take the challenge, just like every other company should take the challenge, and they should make it happen because nobody's standing in their way. Wow.
So it's true. There's a lot of talk always that, well, we have all this stuff if the FDA wasn't so stringent. And I think a lot of that comes from people seeing that a lot of our technology is available in Europe before it's available here in the US. And it's getting a little bit off topic, yeah. But this is something that comes up a lot in our conversations on 2 Diabetes about upcoming technology is why does stuff take so much longer in the US than in Europe? Do you have an answer to that?
Well, there are different approaches to doing regulation in Europe and the United States, but the fundamental answer is that's the way the companies chose to do it. So the companies didn't just submit to the FDA and submit in Europe and then find that it was approved. Every time Medtronic, for instance, had a product approved there, it's because they chose to register it there years before they actually registered it in the United States. So it wasn't that the FDA was just taking years and years and years to evaluate an application. That's not what happened. It was that the company actually didn't want to go through the work to do it here. So we actually have, and we think Europe is a wonderful opportunity as well, and we plan to be there, but we're going here first and to the FDA first. And just like Dexcom, for instance, has. And another great proof point, I think, for the FDA's evolution, their G5 sensor approved 6 months early. I mean, that's a big win. 6 months before they were anticipating FDA came back and said, yeah, this is good for patients. You guys have done it the right way. So this is one of the learnings I had. I think maybe myself, I was even a little unfairly critical of the FDA, because it's easy to bash the FDA, right? It's the government. But in fact, the companies, in retrospect, with the exception of Dexcom, they weren't doing it the right way. They weren't going to the FDA. They weren't collaborating with them. They weren't saying, here's what we want to do. How can we get it done with you? They were just taking the easy approach and going to Europe first. And that's great. You can get it on the market, and then you can tease the people here in this country with it, and maybe try and bully the FDA. But it doesn't work, and as long as you're willing to do the hard work, as we are, because we want to make sure it's safe as much as the FDA does. We want to put it on our family members and ourselves.
Right. Wonderful. Well, so then how about the issue of cost? Because of course, this is always sort of forefront on people's mind when there's something wonderful coming down the pike for people with diabetes. Is how accessible will it be to sort of the average person? We all know the cost of having diabetes can be absolutely astronomical. So you had talked about your service being provided by a monthly fee, and you actually even mentioned co-pays and insurance. So talk to us about that process.
So the way to think about cost is a little bit different in our model, because, for instance, when you buy a sensor-enabled pump, a Medtronic pump, which costs $8,000, the insurance company buys it up front. And the person who actually has to do the copay, if that copay is 10% of $8,000, that's $800. That's one check. So this is a big expense. We're actually, by taking that and drawing it out and thinking about it as a monthly fee, we're going to be lowering the bar, both for insurance companies and for the patients, because the 10% of, say, $700 is a lot less than that 10% of $8,000 or more over time, which you add in all of the different consumables. Bottom line is, we're going to be doing it in the smaller bites, and we're going to be less than the sensor-enabled pumps today. So whatever it is today that you're looking at that has a pump and has a sensor and has the consumable elements, the sensor and the infusion sets or the reservoirs, you add all that up, and we're going to be cheaper than what people are providing today. And we're going to be a lot more effective and easier to use, and a lot more enabling of a quality life and health outcomes. So the cost is, we're committed to doing it for less, because we think that's what the world is going to require. That's what insurance companies are going to require.
That's fantastic. I really like your commitment to providing something wonderful that we can all access for less than potentially we're paying currently.
Well,
so
I think it's necessary, and it's also possible because there's a lot of waste in the system today. There's a lot of support costs and sales costs to support insulin pumps, which just aren't very well designed products, that break too much, that have a lot of complexity, that require specialized training and support, and all that's very costly. And it just doesn't need to be that way. It's not as simple as this device, but we can make it a lot more like this. This doesn't come with a manual. I don't have a manual for this. I pick it up and I work it out, and that's not an accident. It's because somebody actually designed it and designed the software to be intuitive enough that it's accessible to a person without a month-long training and extensive printed materials and personal help and coaching. Now, living with a automated insulin delivery system is not going to be as simple and as picking up an iPhone, but it can be orders of magnitude simpler than what we have today, and that's our goal.
Wonderful. So what do you see at this point in the progress toward bringing this to market? What do you see as the potential roadblocks or holdups?
I think the roadblocks are financing the effort. It's going to take a lot of money over time, over $100 million. We've raised over $10 million to date. We're going to have to raise more money. I believe that as we achieve milestones along the way, we'll be able to finance the company such that we're able to do that. But that's going to have to happen in order for us to be successful. I think execution is really the thing I think most about. And, if I'm up in the middle of the night, I'm thinking about all the different pieces, because there's medical devices here, and there's some small amount of hardware development, and then there's software development, the firmware on the phone and the algorithm, then there's the app, and then there's actually the cloud, then there's the software that needs to be written so clinicians can get access to how patients are doing. There's a lot of different moving parts in this business. It's bringing a lot of stuff together, and that's part of why it hasn't happened, is that you really have to think big picture, and you have to solve a bunch of different problems at the same time. You got to make it easier for patients and better for patients. Plus, you got to make it easier for doctors, so that not only a endocrinologist at one of the high-touch endocrinology centers, in major cities can prescribe it, but a primary care provider who has less than a dozen patients on a yearly basis that are seen with type 1 diabetes, that person can also prescribe it. And then also, it's got to actually have very identifiable healthcare economic outcomes that can be measured by payers, so that they're going to be incentivized to reimburse it. And you got to solve all three of those problems, or you don't have the right solution. So we got a lot of activities. Like I say, we have a 34-person company now. Most of those folks focused on software and development of the glue for all the hardware to make a really seamless experience for users. But we're going to have to build a lot of competencies within the organization and make sure everybody's working alongside each other. But as a startup, you couldn't you couldn't have it better. That's what you want. You want it within your control. And I think we have all the pieces. We have the talent to do it. Now we just got to do it, and we'll work hard to make sure we can as quickly as possible, because we need it.
Mm-hmm. How can our community support you in bringing this thing to market? What can we do?
Well, I think you can follow us. You can talk to us, give us your point of view. You can participate as we reach out, as we're doing intermittently, to get user feedback on various stages of the design. I know this community is passionate. I know it is very committed. At JDRF, I had a wonderful experience in leading that community for 4 years, and the passion and commitment and the real intensity to have something better for themselves and for their loved ones. It can't be matched anywhere. And as we get closer and roll out maybe some precursor solutions, we think there's some other opportunities short of the closed loop that we could offer to help people with some of these challenges of life with type 1 diabetes. And I'm not able to be too specific about that right now, but look for us to be active and getting on the market sooner than when the full closed loop system is going to be out there. There's some creative ways that we're thinking where we're an insulin delivery platform, and insulin can be delivered in a number of different ways. And we just want to help people do it better. That's our fundamental goal, is to take this drug that is insulin, which is necessary for life when you have this disease, and do a better job delivering it, and do it with less effort, and less effort by the doctors, by the patients, and to better effect. And so keep your eyes out, I would say, and we enjoy your support and are motivated by your support.
Wonderful. We just got a couple of really good questions in the chat room as you were speaking about support. One is that what about the potential concern about funneling all of the information through cell phones, knowing that, of course, cell phones are not infallible. They're technologically very advanced and advancing all the time, obviously, but we all drop them. We all get them wet. It's potentially a significant point of failure. So what are the thoughts in the company about that?
Yeah, well, we think a lot about that, because it's not just the cell phone. Every component of the system fails at some point. I mean, these are machines, and even biology, body parts fail. It's like, this is a world where you have to anticipate failure and actually develop systems that will actually be able to gracefully deal with that failure. So if a sensor is failing, you get a notification you need to change it. If an infusion set was, the cannula was kinked on insertion and you're not actually getting insulin, we're going to see that in the cloud, and we're actually going to send you a text and say, that infusion set's not working. 6 hours before maybe you would have figured it out otherwise, say, change that. And if the cell phone fails, we got to have a system that continues to operate. So the pump is going to have the smarts and the Bluetooth connectivity to the sensor such that the loop continues. even if you drop the cell phone in the toilet, as my daughter did a couple weeks ago. But just like with the Omnipod, for instance, where it continues delivering insulin even if you leave the controller at home, except better that you could pair it to another phone. All you got to do is download the app and pair it to another phone or download to your computer. So there are backups because we have these backup devices in our lives. And if the phone's not there, the system has to be smart enough to continue to operate without that component. And that's what we're designing.
Nice. So clearly, a lot of folks attending this event right now would really like to get personally involved in this effort. We have a question about whether you need patients for clinical trials, because you have a volunteer guinea pig over here in our chat room who would love the chance to try out this service as part of a clinical trial. And also someone who is interested in whether or not Bigfoot is hiring or expects to be hiring anytime soon.
Yes, we are hiring. Start with the last question. So if you go to our website, there's actually a form there. You can tell us a little bit about yourself. And we've actually hired some great people that just came to us and said, I've had a passion for this. Plus I have some amazing expertise that I bring. So we welcome, and we will be hiring, and it's going to take a lot of talented people in order to achieve this vision. In terms of clinical trials, that's going to be available too on a as yet determined basis. It depends where we end up doing the trials. It ends up being mostly available to people who are in the clinics where we're doing the trials. That's to be determined and to be announced later where those opportunities will be.
For folks who are really interested in doing that, where should they keep their eyes peeled for that announcement?
We'll actually have some reference to it in our communications on our Facebook page. Clinicaltrials.gov is where all clinical trials are registered that are done in this country. So that's for any trial a place to get visibility. But when we're achieving milestones and going into these different phases, we'll be talking about it ourselves, because we're already establishing a dialogue with the community, and we urge people to go and like us on Facebook, and we have a way for people to give us their email address if they'd like to be sent periodic updates on our progress.
Awesome. Oh, I had the camera on me that whole time. Sorry, guys. They could hear what you said, Jeffrey. Okay. But they were watching me type things in our chat room while you were answering that question. So I'm looking in our chat room now to see if we have further questions. You are definitely getting a lot of enthusiasm from folks who are watching and listening right now, and a lot of people who are interested in participating in those clinical trials. So folks, as Jeffrey said, stay tuned on the Bigfoot website, which is bigfootbiomedical.com, and also like them on Facebook so that you'll get any posts, any social media stuff that they send out.
And Twitter at Bigfoot Biomed. It's funny how the website has become a secondary communications vehicle now. It all happens on the Facebook page or through a Twitter post. It's like press releases now, or old school. It's all in social media.
It's all the power of social.
That's right. Yeah.
No one wants to read anything that takes more than 14 seconds, Jeffrey.
Yes. Yes. Well, that you could think that's the brilliance of Twitter. It's like having to actually have a point in such a few number of characters. It makes us all much more concise and respectful of each other's time.
It's true. So thank you so much for your time today, Jeffrey. We've run out of questions, and you have conveyed a huge amount of information. People are really excited, and as I keep saying to you, I want the thing. Yep. So I'll get the thing as soon as everybody else gets the thing. So everybody, let's support Bigfoot in all of the ways that we can to bring this wonderful service to market, so that we can use it and benefit from it. Jeffrey, camera's on you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you. Well, we are not waiting. We are here to get it done, and appreciate your support, and we'll keep you in the loop as we move forward. And we're really gratified to have the opportunity, because we've think we're going to make a big difference, and it's going to be important to a lot of people, including our families. So couldn't have a more fulfilling opportunity in life than to do both of those things together. Thank you for having me today.
It's a pleasure, and we will be in touch soon. Take good care.
Bye.
Bye.